Hi, my name is Will, and welcome to today's episode of the Salesman Podcast. On today's show, we're going to look at how to become a hybrid salesperson, and today's guest is the man, Fred Copestake. Fred is the founder of Brindis Sales Training and author of the Hybrid Selling book and Selling Through Partnering Skills, and we're going to talk about both of these on today's episode. And with that, Fred, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Real pleasure.
You're more than welcome. I'm glad to have you on, mate. Okay, I can feel you've got strong energy. I can feel you're excited, mate, to be on the show. So hopefully we can continue this with some questions from my side. But with that, I'm going to give you a terrible question. It's a lazy question, but I think it's a good starting point to set up the rest of the show. You probably answered this question a million times before, and so I feel bad for throwing it at you. But what the heck is hybrid selling? Someone who's unfamiliar with that term, the tens of thousands of people listening to this, what is hybrid selling, Fred?
Well, my usual lazy answer is, what do you think it is? But actually, no, let's go with that, if you don't mind. If you could give me what you think it is without kind of too much thought, then we can take it from there.
So I'm not assuming because I know what it is because I've read the book, but going from an assumptive standpoint, I would say it's selling both old ways of phones and emails and then new ways of leveraging Zoom, leveraging the newer buyer journey where the buyer is focused on consuming content, engaging with salespeople like down on the process. It's focusing on a new exchange of value where the buyer has access to information where they didn't have it in the past, and they perhaps want salespeople to help them out with different things. How does that fit?
Yeah, no, very good, sir, very good. Yes, you clearly have read it. No, a lot of people will tend to say is, it's when we've got to do stuff using different techniques, so we've got to do stuff like using video and sending video and this kind of stuff, so working virtually. And my answer will tend to be, well, that's virtual selling then, isn't it? That's already got a name. That is a thing. So for me, it's something slightly different where hybrid's about a mix. And so it's a mix of approaches, it's a mixture of things that we need to do to make sure that we are bang up to date and we're going to do things that make a difference for the customer, encompassing a lot of good stuff that's gone on before and some of those newer things to deal with the way that people are thinking, because people are thinking differently as well now. So it's a blend, it's a mixed approach.
How are people thinking differently from the perspective of we're hopefully on the far end of this global pandemic? There's other things going on in the world, which we won't talk about this second because by the time the show goes out, who knows what's happened in that area of the world. But so we'll miss that. But it's post-pandemic. What the buyers want different from salespeople? How do salespeople need to engage differently with buyers? And how do we get more deals done? Use this hybrid approach.
Okay, so first thing, I wrote book one because there's a bunch of challenges that salespeople have got that we need to deal with. Yeah, so and we were chatting about this before we came on live, weren't we? Where we've got to deal with busy, oldie worldy, and muddled mindset. And that's what salespeople have got to cope with now. So busy, they're running around, they're doing lots of different stuff, they're being very, very active, but not actually getting anything done because it's ineffective. Oldie worldy is using old-fashioned stuff that doesn't work anymore. It's winding people up because it is that kind of archaic. And then the muddled mindset is actually, are we supposed to be consultative here or are we supposed to be transactional? Because the company says that we're consultative, we deal with problems, we deal with solutions, but then they push us to sell a load of stuff at the end of the week, end of the month. So, that's actually why I wrote book one, to deal with those issues. That's by being more collaborative. But as soon as I launched that, pandemic came along, and you could see that what happened is that the speed of change also caused us a whole load of other issues. So that's what hybrid selling and the book is all about. That's why I wrote it so fast, was to help people with these new challenges, which I again broadly break down into customer challenges, climate challenges, and change itself challenges.
Sure.
Yeah, so
I think it'd be valuable to touch on these in a little bit more detail because I think we could do a whole episode on being busy, doing things an old way that perhaps doesn't get the response that we expect from customers, and then just frankly lying about being consultants and just trying to shove pitches down people's throats at the end of the day, because salespeople have targets, they have quotas, they get sacked if they don't hit them over months, quarters, years. And so it's one thing for management and marketing to say one thing, it's another thing to be put in a position where your livelihood's on the line, right? So is it cool with you if we run through these in order?
No, and I am a fan of the podcast. I listen to them, and I know that you do a really good job in trying to help people address that stuff and get this, as modern and as up to date as possible. So if we go through each of these, if we think about customer changes, stuff that's happened very, very recently. I talk about ABC. So customers are more advanced, they're more biased, but they're also more confused. So by advanced, again, we know that customers are now further down the buying cycle. They're trying to self-diagnose. They're doing a lot of their own thing. They don't want to speak to sellers. They're trying to do everything on their own. And we've got to deal with that. That is going on. That's real. That's what the research is showing. When I say customers are more biased, by this, I'd probably mean that they're more biased to what they like and what they know, or even that they're more demanding, if you like. They're B2C consumers as well, aren't they? So people expect far more, and I'm not sure that we always can deliver on that. So again, we've got to really understand them, their problem, and be able to deal with that. So it's like all about them, really. They're in the driving seat. They're in this really strong position. But equally, they are also more confused at the same time, because I talk about we're in this VUCA world, aren't we? Where volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. This is all going on. So yes, they know what they like what they know. They're doing their own thing. But actually, oh God, I really know what's going on anyway. So that's the kind of the first set of challenges, these customer challenges that we need to be dealing with, and which a hybrid selling approach can help us with. It's teed up to do that.
Can we turn this to our own advantage? If customers are confused, it seems that they're in a position where if we can help them become less confused, they're going to listen to us. Then if they're going to have a bias towards buying from vendors that they know and like, if we can solve their confusion, then clearly they're going to know and like us, and perhaps they're in a position where we can subtly influence them, nudge them towards an appropriate buying decision. Is this an opportunity as opposed to a threat of the old way of selling things? Should we be framing this up as this is an exciting time if you can be clear with your value proposition, help buyers and then guide them through the steps of the process that they're stuck with, that the deals are more likely to come with you, and this is actually an opportunity as opposed to the threat of just being able to spam emails all day and make quota kind of 5 years ago?
But big time. It's a huge opportunity, because if people aren't doing that, that's why we're not getting meetings. That's why customers don't want to speak to people. They're trying to do it for themselves. But as soon as you can come in and say, look, I can be your guide, I can lead you, I can help you, you are setting yourself apart. This is what the hybrid salesperson can do. They're adding value in that way. I mean, even to VUCA, I came across this model called VUCA Prime, where you kind of fight VUCA with VUCA. And it's brilliant. So if customers are suffering volatility, we help them by establishing the vision that they need, understanding what it is that they're trying to deal with. If they've got a problem with uncertainty, we can help them with understanding. We can share information, we can ask them good questions, we can provoke them, we can prompt them, we can get them thinking better. If they're suffering with complexity, well, then we can help with clarity. We can set out the stages. We can talk to them about this is how typically things are bought in your world if you're not doing it that often. Or even if you are, let's make sure you're doing it as best we possibly can. And if they're suffering with ambiguity, then we'll talk about being more agile. We'll give them options to be able to respond to stuff faster and get in front of their own game. So for me, that's where a modern salesperson can add huge value. That's the opportunity for them. Mm-hmm. It's how you're helping people to think, what you're doing as part of the process yourself. Forget your products, forget your services. Stop talking about that bloody stuff, because people say we're not interested. They're not interested at that time, but become interested later once you've helped them get their head around stuff. It's a huge opportunity for salespeople acting professionally and bringing their full game to bring that value. Yeah.
I want to ask you some examples of questions and things in a second that we can make this real and practical for the audience. But Fred, I feel like if I was into the show right now, I'd be like, that makes total sense. That's the place I want to be, right? I want to be because we do this with our own selling to the enterprise of our training program, right? I jump on calls, and by the end of the call, if the prospect and potential customer isn't super narrow-minded in what they want, whether it's our training program, a different training program, I've pointed them one way or the other. They know where they want to, where they are, where they want to be, what's stopping them, the status quo, how we're going to get them from one side to the other. If they've not done that, it's been just a terrible call from my perspective, as well as pulling the discovery and the qualification, everything that I need to make sure that the deal can go ahead. I try to make sure that they get a ton of value, and often I get email responses back of, "Hey, you're not right, you're not a good fit for us right now. The budget isn't right, whatever it is, but we will use you in 2 years because you've really helped clarify and added a ton of value in that one call." So, which is great for our longer sales cycles. It's not going to be great for some salespeople listening to this who have short sales cycles. So, with all that said, I want to get into that in a second, because that has true value in its own. How to do this on a call, questions we should ask. Before that, though, Fred, how do we set ourselves up so that we're in a position to be able to have these kind of conversations. Because when a sales leader jumps on a call with me, they know that I am a little bit of a knuckle-dragging salesperson, right? But I have done quite a lot of podcast interviews. I have spoken to thousands of sales reps over the years and done consulting and one-on-one training with them. We have built like a half decent at this point training program, so they know I'm not a complete numpty. And I'm sure it's the same with you. Customers get on the phone with you and they're like, "Fred, I've contributed content, podcast, books. I'm basically on board. I'm ready to rock and roll. I just need you to solve a few questions or solve a few answers, give a few answers to a few questions, solve a few problems." But for the average salesperson listening to this, who's selling some random piece of software that hopefully is really valuable and really great for their audience and their prospects, they're starting from a deficit, I feel, versus what me and you are. How do they get in a position where they have essentially the authority and the respect from the buyer to be able to ask these questions and have this adult conversation? Because it's very difficult to go from cold call to the consultative conversation that you just outlined then.
Sure. I think for me, this starts with the mindset. This starts with what are you actually trying to do here and who are you trying to do it for? Oh, I'm trying to do it for me, to hit my sales targets. Happy days. Right. That'll come through. That'll seep through, the American guys. I'm sure you've interviewed some of the guys who talk about having commission breath, and just people don't want to speak to you if you're like that. So for me, that's definitely, but one, I do talk about a collaborative selling approach. We've got to think like that. So that does bring in the old consultative sales techniques. It brings in added value sales techniques. It thinks about how you can be bang up to date by sharing lots of information using a bunch of different media, but you are trying to collaborate with people. So you've got to make that really clear that it is them who is the most important thing, that this is why we're doing the stuff. And so we need to start thinking about them almost like as a partner. And that is a word that's thrown around willy-nilly. It's usually for the person who's going to try and dominate the partnership, I often find. But if you genuinely thinking like, what do partners do? How do partners operate? How do they think? What does that relationship look like? That changes the way you go about doing your stuff. It changes the questions you ask. It changes why you're asking them. It changes why people are going to want to answer. It changes what you do as a result of it. So genuinely think about trying to co-create, trying to collaborate, trying to do stuff like that. That is what will just turbocharge the calls rather than, oh, I've got a little checklist here that I've got to get through to see if it's worthwhile working with you. Are you the person I really want to talk to or somebody else? And now can I talk about all my things?
Yeah.
Because nobody's interested in that. And that's why they're pushing us away. That's why people don't want to speak to us. If you're going in with that collaborative mindset, that is going to start to set you apart.
Are there any practical ways that we can demonstrate this on maybe we don't call, this is an obvious one, maybe we don't call it a qualifying call that we're trying to book with a prospect. We call it a consultative, free consulting session. I don't know what it is. Is there a way to, the mindset is spot on, love it. We can come back to that in a second perhaps. But is there any way to verbally communicate what we're trying to achieve with the buyer, whether it's via emails, cold calls, cadences, social outreach, whatever it is? How do we very literally tell the buyer that we are different to all of the other people who are spamming their inboxes?
Part of it, we could call it what you want.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's what you do as a result of it.
Yep.
But I know how important it is to title something to give that indication. But this stuff will come out from, the very first moment. And, you're talking there about the outreach and about, why should I have a meeting with you? Why should I have a meeting with you? Because I want to talk to you all about my wonderful training program that's got lots and lots of things. It's got a little robot you can talk to. It's got excellent videos. It's got me talking. It's like, okay, whatever. But if you're talking about, look, this is what I understand about you. This is what I understand about your world. These are the challenges that are happening, and that there is a way to deal with this that we can probably help you with. So have some thoughts around these areas, and then let's start to talk about it. Having already consumed some stuff, you're already way further down the line of what it is that you're trying to do. So you've got to be demonstrating the understanding of people, of their world, of what they're trying to achieve to earn the right for that call, if you like.
Yep.
To just rock up and go, but I'll do that in the call. No, not good enough. Yep. You won't. Or certainly with me, you won't as a customer, because I'm too busy for that. I'm not going to take a chance on have a call because something good might come out of it. No, I don't want to take that risk. Show me this is going to be good because we're going to get stuff out of it, because I've seen what you're doing already, and even the way you approached it, that's what I want to be doing.
So is it fair to say then, and tell me if this is completely off base, your cold outreach email could be a hypothesis about the buyer. You've looked into the company, you've compared it with your best customers, you've compared it with people who have failed in the marketplace for whatever reason, with a problem that you can solve. And you perhaps lead with, hey, you're similar to this. We've worked with them in the past on these 3 things. This is what they had issue with. Here's a piece of content on here's a case study or whatever, how we solved it. Would it make sense to jump on a quick call to see if you have these issues and if we can solve it for you? Is that the kind of outreach that then leads to these kind of consultative? I keep trying to pull back and call it a sales call because it's more a conversation, right?
Well, it's still a sales call. Yeah, that's what modern professional salespeople do. So yeah, it's like that, but shorter.
Sure.
We know we've got to try to make stuff as short as possible. So yeah, it is sort of saying, in your world, this is probably the stuff that's going on. Bang, bang, bang. Yeah, we have dealt with people like this. Have a look. I probably wouldn't even go down with have a little look at this, because now again, you're making the customer have to do something. If you've called out the challenges, if you've called out the things that they will recognize as that you do know what you're talking about, that should be enough just to keep the to get the ball rolling, if you like.
Sure. I had a good.
As soon as it's coming me, we, I. It's like, well, good for you.
I had a good pitch thrown my way the other week, Fred. It was a writer, so a copywriter. So we're launching, I won't talk about too much because it's going to come up in every podcast that I do, so I don't want to plug it too much, but we're launching a free version of our sales code assessment, right? Relaunching it because too many people tried to take it. Originally, it crashed, and so we've had to re-engineer it so it can handle the kind of traffic that we're throwing at it. So with that said, someone tried to take it, couldn't get through it. Page crashed, and so they emailed me going, hey, seems like you're having tons of success here with this specific thing. So obviously they got my attention because they obviously care about what we're doing. And he was like, hey, I'm a copywriter. I would love to help you write some follow-up emails for the sales code assessment, and I'll take the ideas out of your brain. I'll put them in copy that people will click on, and I'll save you hundreds of hours worth of faffing about to do so. And he won a bunch of business, like 2 or 3 grand's worth of copywriting business out of me, right? Just from that one cold email. And I think he was actually surprised because I just said, send me an invoice, and immediately I was like, if you can send me that email, you can write emails for me that will work as well. And I think he was like slightly shocked at how quick I just paid him. But that was an email that got my attention. Obviously wasn't spam because it was so specific to me. It made me go, that's what I need. I've not got time for all this copywriting and stuff, but I do want my thoughts and ideas to be the lead of all this. And he's going to suck it out of me, do the legwork, and provide me with great copy. And that, as I said, that was a cold email from some dude I'd never heard of. Got paid a few hours later, and the work was done a few hours after that. And I was like, that was a great cold email.
But that's a brilliant example because, again, done the homework, has looked at what you're doing, your world, has made that so relevant to you. I think people get confused, don't they, between personalized and relevant. It's, hey, well, I looked at your LinkedIn profile and you went to the same university as me and you like dogs. And, well, yeah, but I talked to my mates in the pub about that. So I don't need to pay someone to talk to about that. Yeah, but they're saying, this is what's happened. This is what you're doing. It's bang up to date. And you're thinking, you must be watching me carefully because I've literally only just announced that. So you've taken the opportunity, you've responded to it. It's all about me. So yeah, come on, let's carry on the conversation because I don't feel as though I'm going to be wasting my time here.
I feel like what we're saying is not necessarily, it's not common sense, but it is somewhat obvious, right? If you picture yourself as the buyer, all this makes total sense, right? As a salesperson, we're so indoctrinated, and media and society has their own thoughts and opinions about salespeople as the stereotype, which probably floods into our industry as well. Is it fair to say that if we put ourselves in the buyer's position, a lot of what we're describing right now would be more obvious and clear to us?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it is obvious when you get it, I suppose. So it's a bit harsh to call it that, but yeah, it's again. Sales people perceive it as, you've got to go and you've got to have the gift of the gab and you've got to sell ice to Eskimos and talk hind legs off a donkey and all this kind of thing. As opposed to it's, no, you've got to be really good at understanding other people to be able to put yourself in their shoes to talk about the thing that they find most interesting, which is themselves, to then work out, well, actually, we can work together on this to make you a better version of yourself, to do what you're trying to do better, quicker, more effectively, whatever. And by demonstrating that that's how you are and that's what your approach to sales is early on, then again, like I say, that's why people want to speak to you, because you're a more collaborative person. because you're going to be using, like I said, at risk of repeating, consultative sales skills. You'll work out what's going on there, where are they now, where do they want to be. You'll think then, okay, I can solve that pain. And never use that word with a customer. Please never ever use that word with a customer. But you can, solve those issues, those challenges, those concerns, and add more into it. At the same time, let's build some value into what we're doing. Why? Because we're spending time together. There's other things that I can do. I can lead the discussion. We can start to go down this route. I can introduce other people. We can do all of these things. But yeah, we've got to earn the right early on and demonstrate that that's how we go about stuff. Otherwise, hidden gems, because we'll never have those conversations.
So obviously I agree with you, which is a problem, right? Because these episodes are more exciting
boring,
when I'm debating people, right? I'm going back and forth. Obviously,
clearly we'll try arguing in a minute.
So I'll try and play devil's advocate a little bit here, Fred. Yeah. And I feel like if someone's listening, they're driving along in the car now, they're just off to see, they're off to the office, they're off to see a customer, whatever it is. They're going, this sounds fantastic. I've not got time to do any of this crap. I'm so busy. All I can do each morning is click send on this email cadence that's going to spam 500 people with a kind of customized, personalized email. And I know that I can scrape up 1 or 2% of those suckers and they'll jump on a call and then everything can fall into place, right? A lot of people will be thinking, once I get the right person at the right time with the right product and the right need on the phone, then I can have the consultative conversation. So how do we, if we're going to go for this approach, which is higher touch and hopefully higher conversion rate, so we end up doing more revenue on the back of it via less outreach, via less annoyance to the market, right? We want to reach out to people who are the right people, the right place, the right time. Perhaps we can trigger events and things can be engineered somewhat with pricing or whatever it is. But with that in mind, how do we start to free up time on the other side of things? You mentioned this at the top of the show. How do we become less busy and less productive? Is there anything in the hybrid selling world that we should stop doing to free up time to do the activities that we know generate results?
Right. If somebody picks up a copy of the book, in fact, not even a copy of the book, we'll put a link to the scorecard in that I've developed, which people can answer questions to see how close they are to what I believe is the modern selling model and way of operating moving forward. If they don't do that, well, the good news is they'll have plenty of time to do whatever they want because they will be at a risk of becoming irrelevant. And the issue that I've got and why, I love coming on things like this so I can talk about it is that we can be a little bit like that, the metaphorical frog in the water that's warming up. It's getting warmer and warmer and warmer, but the frog doesn't know. And so it doesn't know to jump out, but it'll end up boiling itself. And that's what's going on. So you can sort of carry on doing what you've always done. You're getting this sort of limited and sort of less and less success. And that is what's going to create the busyness. And so, hopefully what I can do, and lots of the fellow trainers who do things like this, is saying, look, just stop and give yourselves a moment and think about how are you doing it? Because it isn't going to be something that's going to future-proof you. You'll get away with it for a bit, but ultimately it will not be effective. It just won't work, full stop. But you'll not really notice it, potentially until it's too late. And I'm not that sounds quite, I don't know, doom and gloom, but equally it is massive opportunity because if you get ahead of the game and you start doing this stuff, make yourself time to do all of the things that, again, I believe are involved in hybrid selling, you will be a better operator for longer, basically. So
how do we know? This is maybe the most ridiculous question I've ever asked. How do we know if we're the frog, Fred? How do we know if we're that frog?
That's the point. You don't. Apart from somebody comes along and they say, here, have my assessment for free. Just look at that, pick up the recommendations off the back of it and go and do something about it. Because a lot of the things, the model, the hybrid selling model that I talk about it's not brand new. God, here's a lesson in how not to sell stuff on a sales podcast. But what I'm saying is that here are some of the things that are recognized as being good selling that you might well be doing. We'll make sure you carry on doing it and you make it part and parcel of daily activity. There might be things that you don't recognize, but which actually have been around for a bit. And there are some things that you'd say, they are a little bit newer. And I need to get my head around some of those new techniques. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to set it out as cleanly as possible, as simply as possible to say, look, consider these things and get these into the way that you operate. Because otherwise your performance isn't going to be good enough.
Amazing stuff. Well, I will link to the scorecard below this episode on YouTube and then in the show notes over at salesman.org. I will also do the scorecard myself, and I'll put my score on the show notes to see how I perform. And if I'm just a massive hypocrite doing these shows with yourself, Fred, and I'm just a nonsense salesperson myself, which could be the case. I could be the frog.
It could well be. No, it'd be really interesting. Thank you for offering to be the frog in this live dissection. Oh, this is getting a bit weird. No, but what might well come across, that's a bit of mind reading or anything, is that I do know that stuff. I was aware of it. I've used it in the past. Hey, when I was a medical rep, we used to do that stuff, and I've kind of forgot it in this role, but I should be bringing it in. Because if people want the simple takeaway for this, is that the analogy that I use is like playing a drum, and that if your kind of performance is you've got a little drum and you're tapping it away with a single drumstick, that performance might just about have been good enough. As we go forward, because of the speed of change, and it's to do with the speed of change, it will not be enough. And what we need to do as salespeople is kind of assemble ourselves this full drum kit. We've got all these different bits that we can play and that we hit as and when it's the right time to do that. So we become a more accomplished and a kind of a fuller operator in what we do. And most people will probably, if they're truly honest with themselves, step back and go, you know what, my drum kit isn't big enough. I need to start building that up now, literally for the here and now, but also certainly moving forward if I want to have a career in this. I need to be bringing that thing up.
Sure. Something that I'm doing this year, which I've never done before, and it seems absolutely ludicrous, is quarterly reviews. So I've got one coming up in a few weeks from now. And I think salespeople should be doing this as well. I'm taking 3 days off, no content production, no customer calls, no one-on-one mentoring or anything. I'm just going to look through the numbers. I'm going to see what's working, what isn't, what content is, what isn't. We get tons and tons of customer feedback because so many people go through the training program of what people want, what people don't want. And how ludicrous is that? I've just been so busy that I've never done that before, like routinely. At the end of every year, we do a big poll, like 5,000-6,000 people giving us responses, and that kind of goes into a big database, and numbers get spat out of that, and thoughts and opinions that we can improve upon. But quarterly reports is something I never did when I was in a sales role. Other than maybe we had a quarterly sales meeting, so I needed to do some kind of presentation for that. But really deep diving into the CRM, into the email marketing that we're doing, and everything like that is my kind of mission this year, so I can avoid becoming the frog.
Yeah, and that hopefully, and by the sounds of it, will involve a lot of review of yourself, and that's again another drum that I beat, which is that salespeople have got to take time for themselves. Yeah, they've got to give themselves time to stop and think. And as we get under pressure and as the world speeds up and we're trying to do all this stuff, that busy goes into a bit of a vicious circle, because we don't just stop and go, hang on a minute, what am I doing? Is it making a difference here? Am I doing the right stuff? How can I get better at the things that I need to do? Am I concentrating on the wrong area? And we just feel kind of guilty giving ourselves that time. So I strongly advise salespeople to just give themselves some thinking space, some reflection time, because that is an investment. Think of it as an investment. That's how I kind of make a recommendation on that. So I mean, I do that every day.
Yep.
I do that every day, and people go,
what does it look like in the process?
I talk to a robot. Yes, Fred. We'll cut this bit out. No, seriously, I talked to a robot. I use this app called Rocky.ai. It's an artificial intelligent chatbot. But rather than you ask the artificial intelligence something, and it gives you an answer, like, hey, Siri, what's the capital of? Mm-hmm. Rocky asks you questions. So you've got to answer these things. So first thing in the morning, grab the phone. And I know people say, oh, that's the worst thing you could do. Yeah, but first thing I do is put Rocky on. So in the morning, he's asking me about, I have it turned on at the moment onto clarity and purpose. It's asking, what's driving you today? Why are you doing this thing? How are you going to do this? It's 5 minutes, but it's the questions that it asks, like any good coach would, that makes me think. And again, you type these things in, it's using the AI, it's using machine learning to then ask a question based on the response you give, and then suggesting little nuggets to read. It's an amazing little program. It's so cool.
I love that.
And yeah, no, it is good. And then in the evening, again, while Mrs. C's watching EastEnders, whatever, it's like, okay, bang, Rocky on, 7 o'clock, boom, 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 another 5 minutes answering questions. What have you done in the day? Reflecting. And of course, the question trigger is questions. Salespeople shouldn't need explaining why questions are such a good thing. That's what Rocky does. He's brilliant. Again, I personalize them a bit too much, I think, but it's a nice bit of kit.
Well, about 85% of the audience are going, what the hell is EastEnders? So that's an inside joke for us Brits, right? But I do something similar, but less tech-focused and a little bit more old school I just read a book every morning. And I'll read books that are provocative, books that are on coaching or whatever I'm trying to learn at the moment. And I just take great pleasure in making I'll walk the dog. The dog is just lay next to me. I'll stroke him. I'll have a coffee, strong coffee, and I'll just sit and read. My missus gets up, like, say, an hour later than what I do each morning. And that process of just having someone else's thoughts in my brain, it's almost like a meditative thing. And I get loads of ideas. And I'll be thinking it up. I'll come up with ideas. It's like similar to being in the shower, right? When you focus on one thing or you're not focusing on anything, your subconscious is spitting up all these things that it's been focusing on the night during the night, and it's been working on kind of while you've been asleep. And I'll have a notepad next to me, and I'll write down all kinds of stuff. 80% of it's just nonsense, but then it's the 10% of, hey, you were a bit rude in the car the other day when that person like drove in front of you. What does that mean? Or this book is talking about. I'm reading 2 books on minimalism at the moment. And I'm trying to implement that into our business, as we touched on before we clicked record, Fred, of how to simplify things, a whole training process and methodologies, selling made simple. So how can I kind of put that even further into the world, whilst also driving expensive cars and having a nice big house and stuff. So there's obviously like a bit of balance there with some of this. And it's something that, in fact, just this morning, I got this quote. I was like, that is genius. I think it's really powerful. I'll share it with you now. You tell me what you think, Fred. I don't know how this relates to sales, but it was, I'm going to butcher the quote slightly, but it was on the lines of minimalism is removing everything that doesn't help you become the person you want to become. Right? So I guess if we put that into the sales perspective, we can probably get rid of a lot of crappy cold outreach that doesn't help us. We can probably start doing a lot more referrals and things like that proactively help people you've already helped. You can stop, which I think you might be on board with as well, because you've been mentioning a few times, go back to the things that have worked in the past and leverage them, as opposed to try and reinvent things or use this new sales tool or use this AI robot that's going to spit out all these things. And in my experience, none of it is ever that valuable, the sales tech stack, other than the obvious tools that we need. I guess if we think about sales like that, of who you want to become, that quota-crushing salesperson, well, you've got to become the person who can do the work, and then you've got to choose the right work to do and just scrap everything else, right?
I think all of those, and I'd take it another angle as well, is think about it from the customer perspective. I mean, again, that's how we should be thinking as salespeople. So it's minimalism. Less really is more often. Because when you say, well, I'm not really sure what to sell this person, so if I just keep telling them stuff, I just keep talking, I just keep giving them more things, more features, more benefits, more stuff, more whatever, more stories, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they'll be able to pick out something that's good for them. Well, that's lazy, and that's why the customers are saying, I don't want to talk to this person anymore. They're not making my life any easier. But by having that real focus as to, I want to speak to you because I reckon that these are some of the things that will be challenges for you, because they are challenges to other people in your world. And I've even done a bit of research to see that actually I can know that that's what you're going through. Let's have a chat about it. Right. This then is the response for you. This is what you need to do. Less is more. I mean, what a brilliant sales approach, rather than just chuck everything at it and hope that something sticks.
You can almost reframe it as just do what the customer, within reason, do what the customer wants, and then just scrap all the other crap that you're doing. And as long as you don't take it too literally, but that's your mindset, you're going to be on the right track there, right?
Yeah. And this isn't about being subservient to customers, by the way. Yeah. So as I talk a lot about leading customers, and again, I use that word because, well, it forms an acronym, EVOLVE, which is in the book. But it deliberately gets people's back up a little bit. It's like, what? You're saying that salespeople should lead customers? So yeah, absolutely I am. Not up the garden path, not in an 80s kind of manipulative way where we're trying to get them to do stuff they don't really want to do and we're using all these kind of trickery and things. It's leading them in something that they are struggling with, they don't know how to do. Yeah, so maybe the word would be guide would be better. But yeah, we're doing that sort of stuff, but it's doing the stuff that is absolutely relevant to them. A word I keep coming back to whenever I'm thinking about hybrid selling, I'm thinking about helping people be modern, helping people be bang up to date. I keep going back to relevance. Is what you're doing relevant to the customer, to you, whatever? And so, yeah, that's why I try to do that. I mean, that's why I did write the book so quickly because I thought, these changes have happened. They weren't foreseen. They're probably changes which were going to happen anyway. It's just they happen so fast. Let's get people ahead of the game and get them doing stuff that's just going to help them.
Yep. Clearly, I remember, I've talked about this on the show before. We can wrap up with this, and you can tell us about the books of when I was in medical device sales. I had actual arguments with sales management, regional sales director, what was his title? National sales director I was not allowed to give our customers catalogs, right? I was not allowed to leave product catalogs with surgeons so they could look through. And there was no pricing or anything in these catalogs. Heaven forbid, email over pricing of multiple products rather than sending them a quote, right? And even to log in online, this last company I worked for had incredible content. They worked with some of the world's top leading colorectal surgeons, urologists, gynecologists in I won't name the company, I know they did that, but in their own operating theatres, using all of their equipment, and the surgeons were more than happy to promote and talk about the procedures and how they were innovating in their space. You had to get a login to jump into this crappy 90s portal where nothing worked. It definitely didn't work on your phone. And it was so backwards when and they've done it now, if you dump those videos on YouTube, they'd have tens of thousands of views, which doesn't seem like much. Apart from these are tens of thousands of high-level surgeons. Maybe there's only 50,000 of these individual surgeons in the world, right? You can have a massive percentage of them learning how to do these procedures from your content. So of course they're going to go with your product or service. And I had so many battles trying to communicate this. So I feel like what we're describing here, regardless of the pandemic, regardless of whatever else, just with the way that the internet has evolved, the way that business and consumer sales has evolved, I think this was always going to happen, and perhaps we've just been slapped in the face of it a bit quicker.
It's a bit quicker, and just the use of the technology, the using video, the use virtual, all this kind of stuff, sending video. Again, some people are saying, oh, I'm not going to do that. Okay, well, don't do that now then. You're missing a trick, because there are people that are. I was talking on sales training last week. I said, look, in 2 years' time, this will just be the absolute norm. It's what we will be training for, just the way to do stuff. Now you can be slightly ahead of the game. So yeah, I'm probably going to slightly off track, but no, you're right. It's, again, I'll go back to the value the salesperson brings is in the conversation, or it's in the way that they can structure the whole sale so that they're kind of guiding the right people through the right things that they're trying to do. They're stimulating the right thinking. They're getting the right conversations going. They're showing the right things at the right time. Or confirming to people who've already done their own diagnosis stuff that, yes, what you saw there is correct. That's where the salesperson adds value. It's not with, I've got this information. Yep. Hey, and if you're nice, I might show you. It's like, Fred, we've got all that information from you, your competitors, everyone else, and the fact that, medical sales, I've been at university for 7 years to learn about it. I've practiced it for another 20. So, yeah, I can live without you. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, and look, in my experience, if the buyer comes to you just asking for your pricing and you're withholding it anyway, they're probably just justifying the fact that they've worked with someone else, or they're putting out a tender or something anyway. So at that point, if you're only engaging, you've probably lost the deal already. With that, Fred, we'll wrap up there, mate. Tell us about the books. Tell us a little bit more about the scorecard that will be linked below this video or in the show notes as well. And anything else you want to share, mate?
Yeah, well, I'd say the book I wrote pretty quickly because book one came out and then everything changed, but actually it's not. Book one's still very relevant, but hybrid selling, it started, there's 3 parts to it. Part one, there's a story. So we've got 2 little sales guys, Harry and Larry. They're probably good mates for your Sam, actually, to be fair. So yeah, Harry and Larry, and what they do is they've got to go through some changes. Clearly, they've got to work out how to get through some quite difficult times. I wrote it like that because I wanted people to kind of identify with where they might be. Storytelling is really effective. Basically, they invent the evolved model. And so in part 2, I had to go through the evolved model, which are the sort of 6 main elements that I believe make up that big drum set thing I was talking about. So we talk about the essentials of selling. So the big foundations, the basics, the stuff that we've got to do to make sure we're good at sales. I talk about virtual selling. So yeah, we talked about it, working on video, sending video, social selling. I put into that bit because I needed to put it somewhere, and think about some of the AI tools. Talk about opportunity management. So again, it's thinking about what information do we have? How do we use that? How do we map out what the actions are going to be as a result? How do we take that stuff forward? We'll talk about leading, as we've just been saying. How can you sort of guide people? How can you align to their process if they know what it is? How can you help them design process if they don't? Talk about value selling. again, this stuff's been around a long time, but I sometimes wonder, do people do it well? We seem to have this thing at the moment where people turn up and go, right, I'm going to tell you what your value is. As well, really value selling is helping somebody to understand what the value could be and how we can work on that together. Talk about how you expand the sales. So it's account management stuff, customer success management stuff, because we should be selling results and outcomes. So that packages the model up. And then the last section is, well, okay, so what are you going to do about it? You'll appreciate as involved in training that information is good, but it's all about implementation. So it's how can I help people to take this stuff and start to do stuff with it? So there's some extra analysis tools in there so they can start to understand themselves. Broadly like the scorecard that we'll put the link to, but it's all about getting, my little mantra is good people doing good things in a good way. That's how I want to try and help the world of sales, if you like.
Amazing stuff. Well, I appreciate you, Fred. I appreciate you're the first person to come on the show and mention EastEnders. You're the first person, other than I say this all the time, to say willy-nilly. I don't think that translates elsewhere in the world, so I appreciate that, mate. I appreciate you. We'll link to the books, the short scorecard, that AI tool that you mentioned earlier on in the show notes to this episode over at salesman.org. And with that, Fred, I want to thank you again for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.